Welcome to Talk Tantra to Me. It is such an honor to be holding space for this divine knowledge to make its way into your ears and lifestyle. Today, I'm going to be sharing a practice with you that might feel a little bit funny or silly or controversial, and that is deep throating as a spiritual practice. And this may feel triggering for you or surprising. There may be some curiosity, there may be some disgust, there may be some disbelief, and all of that is welcome here. And to me, any place where there's a trigger, it's an opportunity to gain new perspective or clarity, and maybe an invitation to do some sexual shadow work, which, by the way, there is a free sexual shadow work workbook on my website, www.talktantratome.com/free. That being said, this is an opportunity to get potential awareness of how you can love and accept yourself more fully, and even open yourself up to the potential of deeper pleasure and presence with yourself and with your partner. So invitation is to say, to open yourself up to the possibility here. Maybe try something new if you feel ready for that. And if you feel like this is not in alignment for you, then you can say, good for Leola, not for me. And that is 1000% welcome here. To me, Tantra is all about finding your own journey, finding your own path. Tantra, the word itself, etymologically means method for expansion, or modalities and moments woven together to create this expansive, path, this expansive reality, and this harnessing of the life force energy for such. So different tools and modalities work for each and every one of us. And so much of my work is around encouraging you to find what works for you, what excites you, what liberates you, and to use those tools to build a solid foundation in which to then create a tantric lifestyle. So let's get into it. Deep throating as a spiritual practice. Anything to me can be spiritual and expansive and useful for your growth, depending on, your intention primarily. Also your state. There's a little bit that has to do with like what, where you're at in your journey in that moment. Something that might work for you now may not work for you 5 years from now. For example, when I first started studying Tantra, I actually completely stopped watching porn and completely stopped engaging in any BDSM sort of dynamics or behaviors, because I needed to heal. Like, that was the most important thing for me in that moment. The porn and the BDSM stuff was triggering me so deeply that I needed to go in and do the inner work, do the shadow work, to find a way for those things to feel expansive and to approach them in a conscious and healthy way. Now I feel that I can approach BDSM from a place that is really beautiful and fun. And to me, it allows me to explore the whole range of my humanity, especially the more primal and dark pieces. Porn is something that I took a long break from watching, and now I occasionally watch something, and usually it's for, education. One of the guests on this podcast, Kate Marley, it's one of the most popular episodes I have on this podcast. She creates meditative porn, and that's the title of the episode, Creating Meditative Porn with Kate Marley. And so I actually found her episode because I was curious. This was, years ago, I was curious about prostate work. And so I searched on Pornhub how to give a prostate massage, which is something, that is really beautiful and very healing and very expansive for those that have a prostate to witness, which is primarily men or people with masculine, or male genitalia. So maybe you've experienced this yourself as a man. Maybe you've delivered this to someone that is a man. Maybe you are curious about this. Beautiful experience, super healing. So that's how I actually found Kate and found out more about prostate work, was by using porn as a resource to expand my perspective, right? So to me, nothing is inherently good or bad. It's just, how can I use this intentionally and consciously? There's also a beautiful episode, while I'm just shouting out all the episodes, there's another episode about kink as and BDSM as a way to heal trauma. I think it's called Conscious Kink, et cetera, with Lena Dune. And that's also another one of the most popular episodes on this podcast. So if you are open and feeling frisky and desiring to alchemize what you've been told is wrong or bad, these are great episodes to reclaim those pieces. And this one as well. So deep throating is something that we often do see really on porn, and it's often really aggressive, questionably in consent. And yeah, I don't necessarily recommend using deep throating on a porn website as your gauge or as your education for how to do deep throating consciously. So I think that that's also why so many of us really feel maybe a stigma against the act of deep throating, or feel really drawn to it, or feel really like dirty or messy in the act of deep throating. And there's nothing wrong with being dirty or messy, but just highlighting the association of this particular sexual act with a sense of judgment, right? Or only a slut would do that, or you have to go to a whore to get a deep throat blowjob, or whatever it is. And maybe those things, as I'm saying these, ideas, you're like, actually, I have thought that, or I really like it. And I like it because it makes me feel like, a whore, or it makes me feel like so primal. And I want to just validate there's nothing wrong with any of these qualities or topics. And we get to approach it consciously. Also, there's an episode all about the whore as the holy woman, a couple episodes back, episode 80. So that's a very recent one, and it's one of my favorites as well. So let's go a little bit deeper into the deep throating space. We also tend to feel that deep throating is just for the person that is receiving in that space, so the penis owner, the man. And I'm going to continue to use the word man, but acknowledging that there are individuals that may identify as something other than a man and still have a penis for the sake of this conversation, and as someone that is a heterosexual woman that is approaching men that were born men, I'm going to use that, terminology. So while men are nearly certain to enjoy the devotional offering that is penetrating someone in the mouth, or being received in the mouth, it's really truly an honor as the giver, as the one in the role of receiving the cock in the mouth. It is an honor to hold that vulnerability at the portal of your throat. Your throat chakra has the capacity to induce mind-altering states and open portals of authentic expression. The throat chakra is the chakra of, expression of our highest truth. And our highest truth is in resonance with our highest love. So it's really this space of like surrendering that part of ourselves in a very intentional way. And conscious deep throating to me is not necessarily about a man just like suddenly grabbing the giver's head, in this case, the the woman's head and just like ramming it down on his cock. While that could be consciously done, and I've certainly done it that way, my suggestion at starting point is to allow the woman or the giver to go into the space slowly and softly and explore those edges before having a face fuck, for example. So receiving all of his penetrative potential in the same mouth that voices your desires and dreams shouldn't be taken as a coincidence, or at least there's an opportunity here, and why not maximize it, especially when we're working with sex magic, which is really calling in those desires. And again, this is the same voice, this is the same throat that is going to be speaking those desires, that is now receiving this incredibly powerful phallic force. So, thinking about a blowjob as requiring more of like an active, like worship, deep throating is even more of a surrender. So keeping that in mind as this piece of surrender as an opportunity to know your power and to also gain something. Like we often think of surrender as like giving up something, and while there may be a quality of that, you're also gaining like a whole new reality. Like when you close your eyes, you're surrendering your eyesight. What happens when you close your eyes? Maybe you're meditating and a whole new world opens up in that meditation. Maybe you're closing your eyes to sleep and you're dreaming and a whole new world opens up. Obviously, we're talking about very consensual ways of having a sacred surrender as well. So anything less than surrender in the space of deep throating will often create tension in the body or in the mind, and that can lead to a less than expansive experience. So it really is this game of trust. And that's a really powerful, beautiful thing that can be super medicinal. If you think about even doing something like some of my deep throating experiences have felt almost like plant medicine journeys, because it feels like I'm almost like leaving this reality and feeling this sense of like, because it's such a surrender, I'm like swirling almost. And it's the same when we take plant medicine. A lot of people, including myself, before they have plant medicine for the first time, the number one fear that I hear is I'm afraid of losing control. I'm afraid of losing control. I don't want to take the plant medicine because I'm going to lose control. And yes and no. Yes and no. My experience in both of these circumstances, whether it's, plant medicine or pleasure as an altered state of consciousness, or deep throating, which leads to potentially altered states, there's always an element of like grounding back in and trusting the support that I have from the earth and from my guides and from myself, and knowing that this too shall pass. And it often ends up being super fucking amazing. So deep throating really is, it can be messy, and it has this beautiful quality of invoking primal, intuitive, and even meditative states for both parties. And let's talk a little bit more about the hows and the potential blocks in moving forward. A lot of people that, have given blowjobs before and have maybe tried deep throating tend to have a resistance, because they'll have contractions or like a purge feeling, like gagging, where it just kind of hurts back there, which is totally normal. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about the throat chakra, which has this shadow of swallowing our truth. So when we're being penetrated with this really powerful force, it can feel like my truth is wanting to come out, right? And it's like, how do I handle this, right? It's the same way that, like, if you've been listening to this podcast or have, some understanding of like womb wellness and yoni mapping, which I'm sure some of you do, and I'm sure a lot of you don't. Basically, so I'll give a little bit of an overview. Basically, the female vagina and, yoni holds a lot of like tension and stress and trauma. Even as I'm saying this, I noticed that my vaginal muscles were contracted as I was speaking. We don't realize how much of our life we're going around in this like contracted state. One of the first sessions that I did, actually maybe it wasn't one of the first, but it was one of my earlier sessions that I did, one-on-one with someone. The practitioner was working on my stomach, and they were like, your stomach is so tense. You must be walking around all day tensed up, like in this space of like preparing for someone to judge me or okay, I'll just give an example. After they had said this, I thought, well, that's interesting. And their suggestion was, I want you to just be aware of what your body's doing as you're meeting people and speaking with them and talking with them. And I remember there a few days later, I went to lunch with my friend and I had to tell her something about a photo shoot I did or something like that. And there was nudity involved in the photo shoot. And it was like a nude art photo shoot out in nature. And she was kind of a newer friend. I hadn't told her much about my nude modeling as of yet. And so I was telling her, and I felt in my body, I felt my entire stomach and yoni and anus contracted as I'm talking to her because I was so unconsciously in fear. So I was protecting myself by contracting. And this is what we mean when we say the body keeps the score. Your body holds trauma, it holds that fear. And it's with conscious awareness that we begin to relax and allow those muscles to chill. And even for myself, I've talked about this stuff so much, and I'm recognizing in this moment as I'm recording, not now, but a few moments ago, that my canal was not totally relaxed. There was a little bit of tension there. So the point is that women or, yoni owners will often hold tension from day-to-day experiences, past trauma, sexual assault, etc. So like actually having like a really tight pussy isn't the most amazing thing in the world, because it usually means that there's some trauma living in that space. And what you can do for that, this is not what this episode's about, but now that we're getting into it, what we do is we de-armor the yoni. You can do yoni mapping. You can use a crystal wand to do that. You can use a yoni egg. You can go to a professional and work with sacred spot work. ISTA, the International School of Temple Arts, teaches a bit about this. So the idea behind this de-armoring, and it's the same with the throat as it is with the vagina, as it is with any other part of our bodies. When we have tension, so let's say it's in your shoulder. When you have tension in your shoulder, we massage that out. We massage it out, or we might use acupressure or any kind of body work to de-armor and soften the tension. And just like in your back, it's the same with your yoni or anus, and it's also the same with your throat. So deep throating can create a similar sensation and release of tension. And it kind of hurts at first, like when someone is rubbing that knot in your back and it's like, oh my God, it hurts so good, right? And then you get to the other side and it starts to become pleasurable and enjoy. And there's a lot of enjoyment there. And it's the same with the yoni, and it's the same with the throat. With the yoni, a lot of individuals end up having things like vaginismus or vulvodynia or whatever. And I work with these women, and what ends up happening is we do a de-armoring session working with sacred spot. And often all it takes for them to like relax enough to be penetrated is just like breathing and being aware that it's actually their contraction that's stopping. the fear, or that's creating the resistance, right? And then we're able to massage that out. So again, it's the same with the throat. When you are deep throating with a cock in your mouth, you're essentially pressing those points, those pressure points. You're massaging the tension out of the back of your throat, which is really powerful and creates so much spaciousness for a really expanded experience, and also a fucking cracked wide open throat chakra. What? Crazy, I know. So my advice for moving with this is to wait until both parties are already aroused. So don't just necessarily go straight into, throat fucking or deep throating. If it's a man and a woman together, let's have her get aroused first, whether that means like if you want to surprise your man with some self-pleasure, or if you want to surprise your man with deep throating, maybe like self-pleasure a little bit before and get yourself excited. Or if you're, requesting this of your partner, you're requesting deep throating, maybe you like get her juicy and wet and yummy before you move forward with that. Whatever it might mean for you, my suggestion is just to like get the arrows flowing a little bit. Awaken the Kundalini. We definitely are aware that for most people, when their endorphins are running because of the pleasure, or because of sexual energy in their bodies, the hormones and endorphins that are released allow us to tolerate the pain or the tension a little bit easier. So before going straight into that deep throating, just making sure you're aroused, and then starting slow, maybe just first moving into the blowjob and putting the cock in the back of your mouth and just holding it there. It's not like it needs to be like this constant hammering of the back of your throat. In fact, like really slow, juicy, move your head around, like see where you're feeling the tension, lean into the tension in the same way that you'd lean in to someone massaging a knot in your back. Lean into it, play with the pace, then maybe try, some faster, more intense connections and penetrative movement, and then slow back down and feel into it. If you're going to move into the space of more throat fucking with the deep throating, which to me, the difference is that when you're being fucked in the face, it's an even more of a surrender, because the penis owner or the man is essentially maybe on top or maybe holding the head and creating the motion that's really like fucking. And so in that space, like as the giver, you're actually now completely surrendered to his, his rhythm. So if that's going to be a part of your practice, my recommendation is to create a hand signal or like a pinch or something to communicate when you need to breathe, or when it's been too much, or whatever. I will also say that like tears are totally normal in this space. Saliva all over, amazing, totally normal. And also gagging, it's possible to have an actual purge, to throw up. To me, that could be a part of the medicine experience. Just explore your edges, right? It doesn't need to be anything too intense, especially if this is your first time working with this in a conscious way. So those are my tips and suggestions. Cliff notes here. Working with the throat, with deep throating, we have this beautiful opportunity to de-armor, to soften tension, to create space for expansion, and even altered state of consciousness. I hope you enjoyed all that this was. I definitely enjoyed talking about it. To me, it's so fun to create space, to welcome in all of our dirty, darkest desires and integrate them into a more conscious and intentional way of relating with intimacy. And if you're interested in this type of work and you'd like someone such as myself to go deeper in a one-on-one container to dismantle, any of the fear-based belief systems or outdated societal conditionings that are keeping you from embracing the wholeness of your life. If you'd like some support in gaining confidence in communicating your needs, communicating your wants, communicating your boundaries, I am here for you. There's so much opportunity to discover the tantric tools to make you a irresistible lover, and to also create a life that just feels so juicy and lovely and amazing. And that is so much of the work that I do. If you're interested in that sort of way of being, definitely check out my website, www.talktantratome.com. Click with the Work With Me tab. Specifically in this one-to-one sort of offering, I recommend the Sacred Intimacy Mentorship, but I also work one-on-one with people in body work. I also work with couples and have some events and other fun things for you to check out on the website. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for opening yourself up to the idea of sacred sexuality. With so much gratitude and love, have a sexy and spiritual day, and I'll catch you next week on Talk Tantra to Me. Ta-ta.